Hello. Sometimes. I always start my videos with sometimes. Sometimes other people do behave in ways that has negative impact on ourselves. And we feel terrible. And we can have emotions of frustration, disappointment, anger, sadness, concern, hurt. And the way we think, our thoughts about the situation, about the person, will either accurately reflect the reasons for that behavior, or we could make mistakes in our assumption. Also, we can create extra unnecessary suffering. Depending on how we're feeling, say if you're feeling angry, what's available to us as a response, especially automatic response, is very different from when we're feeling frustrated or from when we're feeling sad and hurt. We have different responses, and some of them are empowering and some of them are harmful. Some of them help solve and some of them help or contribute towards more problems for us, others, in the situation. And one way to look at a behavioral problem caused by someone else is the automatic impulse and thought of, it was done intentionally, with the intention to harm us, with the intention to hurt us. When something is done with the intention to harm us, to hurt us, it does feel worse. And that is a real possibility, and we need to take the steps necessary to increase our safety physically, mentally, and emotionally. And that is a possibility and a probability. We live in a world of good and bad, and every single human being is capable of good and bad. However, when we are looking at the reasons someone might have done something, we also have other options that we can consider. And it's not with the intention to minimize, it's not with the intention to put a black sort of veil over our eyes so we don't see the truth. It's not with the intention to dismiss or live in a rosy world where we think everything is perfect. No, it's with the intention of giving the benefit of the doubt, and also considering that at times we also make mistakes in the way that we make assumptions. Another way that we could look at the situation and the intention of the person causing harm, directly or indirectly, could be perhaps this was done carelessly. Perhaps the person was careless and didn't think of it. For different reasons, the person was not careful and did not think of it. And those reasons could be not aware, not having the knowledge, not having the know-how, not thinking of it, having too much on their plate. So it was a careless mistake, and as a result we got affected. However, that possibility, or this possibility of careless intention instead of intentional intention, was a careless thing. That moves us from anger, for instance, to frustration or disappointment or our judgment is a little lighter and our suffering just softens a little. Because when someone intends to harm us, that has a heavier load. That's a heavier load to process. And it's a stronger blow than it is if someone was done careless. You can still get upset, but that upset goes down a little bit. We're not trying to minimize, we're simply considering other options to increase our awareness before we choose to respond. And also because we might want to have a response that gives the benefit of the doubt, instead of automatically assuming the worst, instead of going with the worst perception and getting it wrong, making matters worse unnecessarily and creating extra suffering for us. So we can look at it as a possibility. We are not certain, we don't know, but there's a possibility that it was done as a careless mistake. Let's take a breath up for a moment. Exhale. Exhale. Close the nostril and exhale. Close the other nostril and exhale. Take a full breath into the belly. And slowly exhale. Breathe in. Breathe out. When we are analysing the reasons why someone might have behaved in a way that affected us negatively, another consideration, another aspect that we could look at is perhaps it was done because the person had different values, different priorities, different preferences, different needs than ours. And as a result, that affected us. So they were thinking of themselves, not necessarily in a selfish way, but in a way of meeting their needs. So they're not trying to harm us or negatively impact on us, but they're trying to provide a need for them. One quick example of this could be someone might be in need of listening to a particular song, whereas someone else's might be in need of having absolute silence, and those needs will compete. So the person who needs the music is not necessarily trying to harm and cause hurt on the person that needs the silence, but the two needs are in conflict and they cannot coexist at the same time. So knowing that makes us feel less of a victim and more understanding. Let's take a breath into the belly and slowly out. Breathe in and slowly out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Sometimes people struggle to manage their thoughts, their emotions, their energy. We all are there at times. And when we are struggling to manage our thoughts, energy, mood, it is harder to give the best of us, to think of the most helpful solution, to think of a solution that has benefits for all parties involved. And sometimes people don't know how to manage their internal turmoil because at times we have too much, at times we have old habits, and sometimes we haven't quite learned or mastered the skill of managing those thoughts and emotions. And we might even have bad habits that sustain those bad habits. And we might take on someone else's or something, and that will have an impact on someone else's. And that is on the person not managing. So at times it's us, and it's on us not being able to manage our thoughts and emotions and the way we look at things. And sometimes it's on the other person. So we can look at it, that person has caused this because in this moment they are unable to regulate their thoughts, their emotions, their turmoil. And from this stance, we can have compassion. Compassion because we are humans and sometimes we are there and also behaving ways that are not our preferred ways. Also, an understanding that often when we are at our worst or have our worst behaviors is because we are at our worst feelings and our worst thoughts. When we feel good, we often can come up with more pro-social, more empowering ways of solving things. So we can be compassionate that others also feel the same because we are all human beings. And we can even have pity on someone. And we can wish them, may you be free from your suffering. May you find peace. May you find light. May you find love. May you feel loved. May you be at peace. So that they can feel better. So we are moving our perception from something was done intentionally, which is a possibility, but to other possibilities. Perhaps it was done careless. Perhaps the person didn't know what they were doing. Perhaps they had different values and priorities and preferences and wants and needs. Perhaps they didn't know how to manage their internal turmoil, thoughts and feelings. And any of those are a possibility. But when we increase our perspective, then we are less likely to make a mistake. Also, it might help us lose the grip of automatically thinking this is the worst and automatically catastrophizing and feeling hopeless and helpless, or having the need to fight, to feeling more empowered and yes, any possibility is viable. But equally, whatever happens in time, I'll know, and I will be able to manage and cope to the best of my abilities. I'll ask for help, I'll learn about it. And it's having positive expectations. Not so that we dismiss the bad. We can prepare for the bad, but if you get stuck just on preparing on if we get stuck on only preparing for the bad, then we are permanently anxious. Because we always, oh look at that, this can be worse. And this and that, and always permanently worrying about the worst. So we are looking at it from a wider point of view, a wider stance. So we're easing off our vision that perhaps could be tunneled. So that we can look at it, what is, yes, it is a possibility. Any single option is a possibility. But what is the probability? And then we can give a number. 1 to 10, what's the probability? Perhaps they're all equal, or some have more weight than others. And the best is always to ask the person, is there a reason why you did this? Did you do this intentionally? And then we can get that input, but sometimes it's not appropriate that we address them, because it would lead nowhere, would go nowhere, would have no solution. So we have to accept the uncertainty and the unknown, and trust that we'll always do the best we can to look after ourselves. But we are not perpetuating the errors and the problems and the anger and the wars. We are choosing to respond differently. The other person is responsible for their way of responding. We are responsible for our stuff. And we can just repeat ourselves. You can influence me, but you do not have control over my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions. You can influence me positively and negatively, but I have the choice in how I choose to look at something, think of something, feel about something, and respond about something. I have choices in the matter, so that we don't feel like we are a victim and at the whim of everything that happens to us. We have choice, we are responsible, and then we don't go down the road of, she made me do this. No. The person might have influences, but we have a choice in the matter, in the way we choose to respond. And at any given time, we choose to respond in line with our values and the person we want to be and the change that we want to create. We might have responded a certain way in the past, but now we are in a position to make a different choice. And at times we might revert to the old patterns, but each time that we are conscious and aware, we can make a different choice. Because we have an impact on the way we think, the way we view things. And we are minimizing our suffering and others' suffering, and avoid causing extra unnecessary burden and problems because of our way of looking at things incorrectly. You can do this! So, which choice you gonna pick? The worst choice. Unintentionally. Well, sometimes it's unintentionally because someone is coming from a place of suffering, and at times we do behave in that way. Perhaps it's not our best choice, it's not our proudest moment. So we are all humans, and not all humans get it right and wrong at times. And sometimes people might make better choices. Perhaps they get more experience. Perhaps they have a certain temperament that might lead them into make choices more naturally. If we struggle to manage our reactions, and if we did grow up with trauma and abuse, then our brain might be a little bit more on the overdrive, looking for and scanning for problems, and automatically assuming the worst in people and things. But we can look at it. Am I reacting to this moment, to this situation, in this moment in time, or am I reacting to all the things that has been done to me, so that we can guide if we are being fair to the situation, and also we're not catastrophizing, automatically expecting the worst. I sincerely hope that you find this helpful. Just look at different options, why something might have happened, why someone might have behaved in a way that harmed you. Best thing is to ask if it's not possible. then you can consider those options in your mind or in writing. It's not always appropriate to ask someone. Equally, even if you ask, the response might not be 100% accurate, because often people might not necessarily admit to their vulnerabilities, or perhaps of behaviors that they might not feel proud of. Someone might not say, I've done intentionally, because they might want to be perceived as a person that is reasonable rather than someone that is vindicative. So you might not always get truth response. Sometimes you do, depending on the safety, on the relationship, and how open and how able the person is to disclose themselves. But certainly is a closer response than it is from the thinking of the mind, from the imagining. However, we have ways of looking at it that can support us or make the situation feel lighter, rather than automatically assuming the worst. Love. Good luck, good luck, good luck. When something is done to us in a harmful way, intentional harmful way, it's very hard to cope with. And may you have the strength, the love to go through it if that's the case. The courage to address, to make choices. However, also consider that sometimes things are done accidentally, unintentionally, for different reasons. And sometimes it's nothing to do with you. It's just on the other person. The way the person is more about the other person than it is about you. And sometimes you just remind them of someone where they might have had a dealing in the past and it was not favourable or positive. So they might be transferring, sometimes in transferring their stuff onto you. So it's not to assume responsibility. We should look at ourselves. In what way have I contributed? What have I done to contribute to this? What am I doing to contribute to this problem? Can I behave differently to see if I get a different reaction? Can I try a little experiment, perhaps for a day or 2 or 3 or 4 a week? Can I behave differently and see if I have a different reaction? Because sometimes things are done intentionally, but sometimes it's not intentionally. And you don't want to make that assumption, so that we can have access to better responses. And we don't want it to be a self-fulfilling prophecy where we are mistaken and then we react from that mistake, and then we get a defense back or an attack from the other person, where we actually cause a problem where there was none in the first instance. Good luck, good luck, good luck. And also doing this as a way of minimizing our struggle and suffering. Because when we think that everything and everyone is against us, is a very heavy and hard place to be. And it doesn't need to be like that, and often it's not like that. It's just our perception. And when we're feeling low in mood, we perceive ourselves as being more of a victim than we actually are. So we're trying to support ourselves. We're trying to add extra wings so that we feel a bit more uplifted, and we are avoiding making the mistakes that cause more suffering. Love. Take a breath into the belly, breathe in and slowly out. And again. And slowly out. Bye for now. If you consider there could be a Martian as well. Or Van. Oh, Actually, just remember, sometimes things are done with the intention for a greater good. And this is very common between parents and children and teenagers, or even adults. We might impose a limit or do something that is seen as mean. For instance, I could impose a limit on TV in terms of time and length, or computer for my son. You'll perceive it as me being mean because I'm stopping him from having fun and doing what he wants in a moment. But my intention, okay, the intention here is to protect his energy levels, to protect his mood, to protect him from going down a path of addiction, and also to being able to do other things that are important to him in terms of eating and exercise and sleep. So the intention behind my action is to help him physically, mentally, emotionally. But he might be looking at my behavior as mean because I'm stopping him. The same could happen with where we ask someone we look after, could be someone older, you can have this or do this when you go for your walk, and it can be seen as mean. You are stopping me, you're making me do this I don't want to. But the intention could be because the walk will be good for the person, because, say, eating healthy foods will bring a greater benefit in terms of health. So looking at the intention, is the intention for harm? Are we assuming negative intention when none exists? Perhaps the way we are dealing with it, perhaps the way they are dealing with it is not the right way. For instance, I could sit on the kitchen table and force my son to eat his vegetables. My intention might be good, but my method is not helpful. So, looking at the intention and the method, sometimes people have a good intention, but their methods are not the most helpful, the most supportive. So by communicating, we are better able to understand where people are coming from. Bye for now.